Okay, in this SY1 screencast, we're going to look at a couple of really important ideas that I think help to make sociology a really important academic subject. And those two concepts are social inequality and stratification. So one of the most important topics that sociologists focus on is social inequality. And social inequality refers to the uneven distribution of resources within society, such as money and power, and also the uneven distribution of opportunities in society. So opportunities related to, for example, having a good education or having a good job or being healthy. And collectively, these opportunities in life, sociologists sometimes call life chances. Now, a related concept is also social differentiation. And this refers to the ways in which we draw sociologically significant distinctions between groups. And this is done on the basis of things like social class, gender, ethnicity, and age. And these things tend to be closely related to different forms of social inequality. And this is very useful because it allows us to aggregate the different types of inequalities, the different types of life chances experienced by particular sections of the population. So if you pick up a sociology textbook and you just have a look at the contents page, you'll see that a great deal of sociology focuses on things like class inequalities or ethnic inequalities or gender inequalities. And in particular, what sociologists aim to do is to describe or document the different types of inequalities that exist within society. They then try to explain why those inequalities exist, and also sociologists often have an input into social policy so that they can come up with ideas of addressing and alleviating these inequalities. Now, an interesting book on social inequalities that I mentioned briefly in the screencast that looked at status is The Spirit Level by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett. And this book is concerned with analysing the impact of income inequality on a whole range of social and health problems in developed countries. So what you can see in this table from the book is income inequality, which is what the book focuses on. And this is showing you how much richer the richest 20% of income earners are within each of these countries compared to the poorest 20%. So at the top of this chart, we can see those developed countries where the gap is the smallest. So in countries like Japan and the Scandinavian countries of Finland, Norway, Sweden and Denmark, the richest 20% on average are earning about 4 times as much as the poorest 20%. And at the bottom of the chart, we've got the developed countries that are much more unequal in terms of income. So in countries like the UK and Portugal, the US and Singapore, you can see here that the gap between the richest 20% and the poorest 20% is about twice as much as it is in the more equal developed countries. And in The Spirit Level, Wilkinson and Pickett compile an index of health and social problems, which we can see over here. So these tend to be the types of things that worry people, that concern people within society, and that undermine either their health or their happiness and sense of well-being. And we'll look at the book in more detail in class, but the central claim of the book is that as societies become more unequal in terms of their income distribution, then you tend to get worse health and social problems. So as we can see here, the claim of the book is that health and social problems are significantly worse in more unequal countries. Now, as I've already mentioned when I talked about social differentiation, inequality affects not simply individuals, but whole groups of people. And such patterns of inequalities between social groups are called social stratification. So social stratification refers to the division of society into a pattern of layers made up of a hierarchy of unequal groups. So social stratification is a system by which society ranks categories of people into a hierarchical system. So an example of a form of social stratification would be one based on social class. And social class is a really important concept in sociology. Okay, social class describes a group of people who share roughly the same economic status within society. In other words, it's a group of people who share roughly the same standard of living. So we can talk about perhaps the existence of a upper class, a middle class, and a working class occupying these different social layers within a hierarchy. And this is important because people's position within a stratification system is likely to have a significant influence on their life chances. Now in class we'll look at some specific types of stratification system, but for the time being be aware that we can classify stratification systems in terms of whether or not they are relatively closed. That's where people are stuck in their particular layer, in their particular strata, and they can't really easily move up or down. And then at the other extreme we've got more open forms of stratification where things are much more fluid, where people are able to move up and down the different levels. And this term that you'll come across a lot in sociology, social mobility, describes the amount of movement that is going on within a stratification system. So in a society that is relatively fair and meritocratic, we would expect to find a great deal of social mobility. Okay, we'll explore these issues in more detail in class, but you might want to have a check that you got some good definitions now of inequality and stratification, and that you're aware that we can make this distinction between different types of stratification system on the basis of how open or how closed they are. So as I said, we'll explore these issues in more detail in class, and then in our next screencast we'll have a look at one final concept that is important to our introduction to sociology, and that's the concept of identity.